Okay, hello everyone. Thanks for joining us today for the Accelerator 2024 information session. I am recording this, so just to let you know, if you do want to turn your camera on and show us your face, you're more than welcome to, but if you don't want to be on camera, that's totally fine. And just if you're coming to us from Australia, I know we have a mix in here because we're doing a Singaporean program and hi Will, nice to see you, and Parissa, hey. Yeah, we're doing a Singaporean program and an Australian program. So all the people from Australia, you'd probably know, but just a quick acknowledgement of country, that I'm coming to you from Wurundjeri land, and just want to acknowledge the traditional owners of this land, which I'm coming from. And to kick off, I first will introduce myself. So I'm Mackenzie, I'm Portfolio Manager at MedTech Actuator, and I'm joined by Dr. Buzz Palmer, our CEO as well, who's going to give us a quick overview of MedTech Actuator, who we are, what we do for those in the Zoom who are a little bit unfamiliar with us. And then I'm going to jump into all the details about this year's Accelerator program, and then we can jump into questions at the end. But as we move through, feel free to drop questions in the chat and as they pop into your head, and then we'll save a bit of time at the end for questions as well. And I will send out the recording and all of the slides as well to everyone. So with that in mind, I think we can kick off. So I'll hand over to you, Buzz, to give an introduction to who we are and what we do.
Great, thanks, Mackenzie. Great to see you all. Thank you for joining this morning. As a brief background, the MedTech Actuator is just entering its 6th year of operations. We're a not-for-profit organisation, and we were founded purely based on the fact that we saw a gap in the market, a market failure, where startups were really struggling to hit the mark, to accelerate technologies through to marketplace, to raise capital, and to get the right momentum and strategy when it came to building a medical startup. It's not easy. We've been there. We've done startups ourselves. We're serial entrepreneurs, clinicians, lawyers, project managers. We know how to build startups. We've been through that journey. I think part of what we wanted to deliver back to the community was this idea that, well, we know how to generate a startup. We know where the hurdles, the challenges are. But we also acknowledge that to build a startup, you need at least 40 capabilities within a medical startup, and no one person has those 40 capabilities. And so before we started MedTech Actuator, we built a community of capability, large corporates, service providers, experienced mentors, clinicians, that were going to come together to really help startups achieve their success when it comes to delivering a technology to market. So if we fast forward to 2024, in the Accelerator alone, so this slide here talks about the Accelerator, but we have 3 major programs. Our first major program is something called Origin, and this is a really early stage entrepreneurship program, and it's essentially for people with crazy ideas. So I've had this crazy idea that I want to test the validity of, and just kind of test the market a little bit. And so it's a really fast-paced, high-energy program. And then at the other end, we have the Global Navigator. This is for startups that perhaps Series A onwards, and they're looking for market access across Asia. So we work with governments around the world, UK, Canada, Spain, Japan, Singapore, Australia, to take later stage startups through to Asia Pacific markets. And we run about 3 or 4 of these a year. And we're running out of the Singapore office, which is where I am right now. Our flagship program is the Accelerator. So this is why we started. This is what we do. This is our bread and butter. Essentially, the program enables, I think I could probably categorize it into 3 areas. The first area is around the leadership side of stuff. Many startup founders are first timers, and it's very hard to know what to do, how to do it, who to contact, how to think about delivering a medical commercialization process when you've never done it before. So much of the Accelerator is really based around how do I, as an individual, become the CEO, the COO, the CTO of a startup, a business, a venture that needs to create capital, that needs to create revenue, that needs to manage shareholders and everything in between. And so part of what the Accelerator does, it really focuses on delivering this element of you to become a leader in your field, a leader in your business, and give you the skills to develop in the world of entrepreneurship and innovation. You can't read a book and expect to be an entrepreneur. It's a skill set. It takes practice. It takes time. It takes failing here and there, and hopefully you won't fail. And that's the whole idea of the Accelerator. is that we help you point out where the challenges are likely to be. So we work on the developmental of you as a founder to become the CEO, the CTO, the COO of the future. The other thing that we work on is the commercialization aspect. So this is the bit that people tend to get a little bit scared about. The technology thing is really exciting, and we work on the technology, but we fail to really understand the commercial side of it. And if we work backwards, distribution, manufacturing, clinical trials, capital raising, regulations, reimbursements, all those sort of things. And they have to interlink. You need to understand how those elements work before you actually formalize your strategy moving forward. So we really pull that through for you and to get you to understand how that might work. And the first 4 months of the program are extremely intensive, and we sort of make no apologies for that. But we need you to know as much as you possibly can in that time, and you'll work with a lot of people as well during that time. And then the third area is capital raising. So we have an exclusive fund with Synthes Capital. We're also about to bring on a second exclusive fund to the MedTech Actuator as well. So there'll be two options. One's a US, one's a Australian, Singapore, and Asia Pacific fund, which is Synthes Capital. We're also going to have a US fund that'll be brought onto the accelerator as well, and we're just arranging that. So hopefully by May, that'll all be in place, and you'll have access to a secondary fund as well, which is really exciting. So the program really focuses on these areas. It helps you navigate the world of commercialization. It links you with the right partners, the right mentors, the right clinicians. We have a huge amount of mentors internally as well, from engineering mentors to manufacturing mentors to clinical trial mentors, as well as to leadership mentors. So you'll get the whole ecosystem coming together to help drive your startup forward. So it's an exciting program. It's pretty intensive. There's no, as I said, we can't apologize about that. Time is of the essence when I think it comes to startups, and so we need to move fast, swiftly, and effectively, and make sure that all the strategies are aligned so that we can deliver the best possible outcome when it comes to starting. So that's who we are. That's what we do. We have an office here in Singapore. We're about to launch an office in Japan, and we're hoping to have an office in India by the end of the year as well. So we're expanding business across Asia, and we acknowledge that startups will enter lots of different markets. So when people come to Accelerator, immediately think they're going to go to the US, and less than 20% actually go to the US. They tend to find other markets that make more sense based on the elements of delivery, procurement, and commercialization. And so we'll work through that with you in Accelerator. It's an exciting program. It's an exciting time. And actually, I don't think there's been a better time to be in health innovation. We talk about post-COVID. You tend to find that post-war and post-pandemic, we see a decade of health innovation. And we're kind of entering that phase right now. And there's never been so much adoptive sort of curiosity, capital in the system from both government and from private markets. And so it's a really exciting time to be involved in health innovation. And so I think you're hitting the accelerator momentum at the right time, and there's huge amounts of opportunities to be had. So I look forward to engaging with you during the course of the next few months, and hopefully if you come to Accelerator, you'll work quite intensively with Mackenzie and the rest of the team and myself and Vishal, and we look forward to seeing you as we develop this through the program. So thanks, Mackenzie.
Thank you, Buzz. And thanks for the overview. You've hit a lot of the overarching high points about what the program is. So it means less rattling on from me about all the details, which is great. And we can get into the questions at the end. So to give you an overview, essentially what I'm going to do for everyone in the room is run through sort of the nitty-gritty details of the program. And I think Buzz has given you a good sense of what the program does. But essentially, some of those stats that are in and around the program, we've had 80 startups come through the program before, and about 20 products are currently on market. So we tend to see a mixture of health tech, biotech, and medtech. We lean on the medtech side, so we see a lot of devices, diagnostic tools, it might be wearables, implantables, but we also see quite a few products that sit within that digital space as well. So they might have an AI component to them. They might be completely purely software. So we get quite a varied cohort, which is always really exciting. And then we also, it's important to note that, it's a startup journey. And as Buzz said, there's no book on how to run a startup. You kind of just have to do it. And so we're really proud of the fact that less than 10% of our portfolio has failed commercially, and we're able to be on that journey with them and really support them through all the hurdles that come in the way and teach them all the things that you need to know, but also be that soundboard for you. We surround you with an amazing number of mentors and experts from across the industry to really empower you as the founders building your own business to make the most of the resources within the program. So I've been describing the program as sort of like a smorgasbord of different things that you will need. So one is that really leaning on that capability development, and we do that through intensive workshops. Then there's also other elements like mentorship, connections into industry like larger medical corporations and hospitals in your local innovation ecosystem. There is also investor readiness, which we lean on a lot, and we help you get prepared for investment, whether that's through our exclusive funding partner, Synthesis Capital, or external investors. And then we also surround you and encourage you to engage with your cohort as well. So it's an amazing place to find your support network and the people that will really help you shape your business over the next 12 to 24 months and beyond. So to talk very quickly just about some of the partners that we do engage and jump into some of the, give you a high level overview. Essentially, we've been in the Australian market for a number of years now and have some really strong connections into the medical ecosystem here. And then particularly the medical ecosystem and the people who look for innovation within that space. So whether it's out at Peter Mac or the Epworth or working with LaunchVic or the universities, we really lean on a lot of the connections here and provide you with pathways to engage with them in the ways that they are really interested in engaging with startups and technologies that are emerging. And it's the same in Singapore as well. So, we're working with Sing Health, the NUH, the biodesign groups out of there, as well as some of the larger corporates across both countries, like your Medtronics, your Boston Scientifics, Cook Medical, etc. And we engage them throughout the program. So they might come into the program as your speakers, as your mentor. They might have opportunities that normally don't go out to the public that we can give you access to. So there's lots of great people that are supporting startups and on the sidelines of this program that we bring in and help engage with you. So it becomes a really key aspect of the program. A lot of people ask, what are the benefits of the program and what do you actually get out of it? So before I go into the nitty-gritty details of sort of what is the time expectation and what does it actually look like, essentially, we try to really support you and really help you navigate that commercial pathway that you have. And so that means supporting you in every dimension of commercialization. And Buzz sort of rattled them off before, saying that, we work backwards and we look at distribution right through to clinical trials, regs. And so we really take you through every single piece of information that you need to know and that you need to consider on your journey as a startup in healthcare. And then essentially put together all of your strategy. And so that you can align your technical development and how your product is moving forward with really strong commercial strategy that is going to back up what you're trying to do with your product and essentially get you ready for investors and make sure that you have that really strong foundation behind your business and that you're ready to go forward. And so we really put founders at the center of this and make sure that you are able to, figure out who you are, how are you going to actually build this? How is your team going to function? What is your purpose, your impact? How are you going to lead? Everything to do with that mindset and mentality that you need to have as a founder, but then adding in all of the really important elements that will de-risk your startup and essentially help you move closer to market in a lot faster, shorter time frame than you would normally take if you were doing this on your own and trying to figure out all these pieces of the puzzle without that magical founder book that doesn't exist. And essentially at the end of the program, what we really like to see teams do is 1, you've moved forward with your product. 2, you have that strong commercial strategy and all of the documentation and the thinking and then, the rethinking and the reevaluating all of the strategic plans to back up what you're doing with your product. And then you would be ready to launch a capital raise with those two things in mind. So with a strong commercial strategy and with some really good technical development behind your product as well. And so essentially, what you end up with at the end of the program is one, a great group of co-founders, as you can see. I mean, co-founders, supporters, friends, as you can see, but a really deep understanding of what happens, what has to go into the health commercialization journey and what's ahead of you, but also, you know, what you need to look out for, what you need to be aware of, and how you're going to move through those hurdles as you know, start to push forward. You're going to end up with that good support system. You'll have progressed your technology. You will have launched a capital raise or be in the process of about to launch a capital raise, and hopefully have secured that investment opportunity that is available to you. And then that essentially sets you on that pathway for commercialization. And you've surrounded yourself with a really strong soundboard of industry experts who, you know, may go on to be your mentor, become an advisor. And then you also have MedTech Actuator there as well to soundboard certain things that you need along the way. And so the program, what does it actually look like? How do we bring all these things together? So essentially right now we're in the application period, which is this area over here. So we will be doing interviews actually on the 8th and 9th of April. Sorry, I didn't update those dates for Australia. And then on the 11th in Singapore. And we will essentially put you in front of a panel of experts once we've reviewed all your applications, and you have to pitch, and they'll provide guidance on who we will select. We also, at the same time, so concurrently, go through a due diligence process. So not only do you have a pitch and an interview with a set of questions, but we will also do some due diligence on your companies as well, which means essentially I send you a form. We ask a few more in-depth questions that's all confidential, but about your, you know, what does your cap table look like? What's your IP position? What is your company structure, and who owns what within all of that? So really getting into the nitty-gritty to assess the opportunity and make sure that there's nothing that needs to be kind of cleaned up or sorted out before you do enter the program. And then we will let teams know pretty quickly. So applications close on the 29th of March, and then we turn it around and have you in interviews within 2 weeks. And then we jump straight into due diligence and start making offers in the following week. So we're pretty quick, and we do, really focus on turning that around quite quickly. So then what actually happens over the 9 months is you'll join us in May, and we will be doing sprints. So for phase 1, we have 3 days where we get together every month. So for each cohort, for the Australian cohort and the Singapore cohort, you can think of them as adjacent groups that will be following the same program. You'll be doing the same content, but you'll have your local group of founders that you work with. And then at some points in time, you will kind of come together and meet, and you'll get to know the other group, and you'll be essentially combined, and then you kind of split back up. So basically, in phase 1, we have 4 3-day sprints, and these are, the dates are just there for you, but essentially sprints 1 and 3 are online. Sprints 1 and 3 are in person. Sprints 2 and 4 are online. And essentially over those 3 days, we teach you all of those commercialization topics that we listed before. We also do other things like we'll do a pitch practice in basically every sprint. We do accountability stand-ups where we're checking in with the group so you can see who's progressed where, who's had some big wins, who's really stuck on something. It also gives us an opportunity to jump in if we can help with anything and keep up to date with what teams are doing. And then we also bring in founders, alumni founders to provide you with, you know, their lived experience and tell you about the pathway that they've taken before you, and really share some of the knowledge that they've picked up along the way. We also bring in mentors. So not only do you receive a mentor for each phase of the program, the first mentor is more general and will be really aligned to just what you are looking to do in that first phase. But we also have mentor lunches, so you're able to engage with a few different other mentors from across our mentor pool and make the most of having a few different mentors around you. And then in phase 2, what we do is a little bit more tailored. So essentially it runs from September until March. We take a break over Christmas, just to let everyone know. December and January, they tend to be the quieter months. We all know everyone needs to take a break and slow down, so we account that into the program. But what we really look at in this second phase is strategy and investor readiness. So basically, we start to do a deal room review and start to pair you with industry mentoring in the second phase. And so from here, we're looking at all of your documentation that you've put together following those 4 sprints in phase 1, and how have you taken all that knowledge on board and then applied it onto your startup? Where are you at in terms of technical development, but then how does that align with what you're doing and what you're saying your strategy is? And so we review every single document in your data room, and we'll go through that, provide feedback, give you a report on where you're at. And then from there, we think about the goals that you might want to achieve coming towards the end of the program. And so essentially, we align this to 3 different things. We look at your capital raising strategy, and how do you plan to not only be investor ready, have moved your product forward, have all that documentation, but how do you actually plan to reach investors and convert them to investors in your business? Not only what is your strategy, but what is your round size? What are you looking at raising now versus how does that impact your future rounds and things like that? And then we will provide you with follow-on mentoring from those strategy days. And so you get, essentially, we come together for a day, and then you have a mentor to follow you from that particular topic. Other topics that we cover in those goal-oriented strategy days are evaluation. Essentially, if you believe your company is valued at a certain amount at a certain point in time, and you plan to increase that valuation, what does that actually mean in terms of the activities you need to achieve? So if you plan to see a 50% uplift in valuation in the next 2 years, what does that mean in terms of milestones, and what milestones matter to investors to actually confirm that that valuation is accurate and that that is what you're worth? And so we look backwards at that plan to really help you figure out whether that is the right valuation for you. And then again, pair you with the mentor to follow up and keep you thinking along that track and really reflect on what your strategy is around that particular goal. And then the last one is partnerships and sales. And so really thinking about, if we are going to start bringing in revenue, what's the early revenue look like for us? If we're pre-revenue, what strategic partners are there for us that can help us achieve some of those milestones? So is it a small pilot study with a local hospital, for example, or some clinicians or a research institution? And so what does that look like? What's our plan? Where are we at? And what are the things that we need to do? And so again, surrounding you with mentors with experience in that space, so you can really start to leverage, not only build the strategy, but then actually start to action it and make sure it's realistic and achievable in line with all of the other elements. And then, of course, we love to do a showcase as well. And we always have an option for an international immersion. So we keep that in there for teams that would be interested. But often we open that up to the portfolio as well. So you might be joining alumni on an international immersion, whether that's to Singapore or the US, or potentially like London for London Tech Week or something like that. So we always like to keep that as an option in the program as well. So as I mentioned, the application process, they're due in about 4 weeks today, I think, if my calculations are correct. And then we will be reviewing them the following Monday morning. So there's really no leeway there. I'm not going to be extending them or anything like that. They will be closing, and we'll be jumping straight into those interviews and the due diligence. Essentially, part 1 is quite easy. If you have a pitch deck ready and you've already done some of the work in your startup, then it's a lot of generic questions about, like, what's your market? What's your problem? What's your solution? How do you plan to make an impact? Why you, who's your team? Why is your team going to succeed? And so we really want to get to know your startup, what you're working on, but also why you're in this space. Why are you motivated to solve this problem? And also, what work have you done to date to validate that that problem and the solution you're presenting is actually the right combination? And so essentially, we want to get a sense of who you are, what you're doing, and why you want to join the program as well. That's a really important one, because we want to give you a program that's full of value. And there's a lot of different elements that you can, make the most of. Sometimes we get people who might just be interested in the investment opportunity, but we really want to work with startups that are highly engaged in the actual elements of the program. So attending the workshops, engaging with the mentors, out in the ecosystem, leaving their mark, putting their heads down and getting the work done, and then, leaning on us when they need it. So we really want to see teams like that in the program, and we'll be really looking at applications to see if we can get a sense of that. We do ask for a pitch deck as well. So we'd love to see, nice, clear pitch decks, and can always offer advice around that too. You can have a look online for some really great pitch deck examples. Then in part 2, we do ask for that due diligence. So there's the invitation to interview, and then we provide that further information where we go into the nitty gritty and look at all kind of the corporate structure of your business. Are you incorporated? Are you not? And then, where's your IP and what does your cap table look like? And of course, it all remains confidential. And then we make offers from April 12th onwards. So what's the commitment? Like how involved do you need to be? Obviously, we have the very, phase 1 is very set. It's easy to know exactly where you need to be. Essentially, those 3 days every month, you come and spend time with us and attend all the workshops. That's great. We love that. We require at least 1 team member to attend each day of the sprint. You can choose who comes from your team. We don't have any specific requirements. And we would love if there's sort of a core team member who really leads your participation in the program. But we're open to who comes along to sprints, and you can absolutely have more than 1 person at the sprints. We love seeing all the team come along, or just 2 team members, whatever it is. And of course, if you're a solo founder, then you can just come along on your own. And then we do expect that between those sprints, you are working on your startup. So we like to build the program so that there are in-person touch points, and you do have those regular engagements with your cohort members, but then it's really self-driven outside of that. So we know that you're all potentially working adults. You have other commitments, life, family, kids, jobs, hobbies, and you need to maintain your sanity throughout this whole process of being a founder. So we fully trust you to manage your own time, and that not everyone can always attend every single session, every single sprint. And we're really comfortable with you organizing yourselves in and around the program requirements. But we do like to see, highly engaged teams. I will also note that in phase 2, we do meet once a month just to check in, and we do accountability check-ins with teams. But then a lot of the content is either we'll give you a specific date in advance for those strategic mentoring days, or we will we'll be emailing you back and forth with the elements that we need. So for the deal room review, that's essentially you don't have to attend anything. But we expect you to have done the work to have that deal room ready, and then we go in and do our review, and then we expect you to kind of have that follow-up. So there's less touch points in phase 2, but we make the touch points really clear to you up front, so you know those dates, and we'll have that all ironed out by the start of the program, so you can mark it in your calendar and be available when you're needed. I think in terms of what essentially are we looking for? So I already mentioned that we want highly engaged teams, and we want teams that are working on really exciting technology. But in terms of assessing this, what we really look at is we look at the team. So we want those passionate, well-rounded founders who are really complementary to each other and who have a bit of experience working together. So I recommend, if you're a newly formed team, just to go through the process of kind of having those early founder conversations, figuring out, okay, who's going to do what within the team, who's going to be the lead, who might be doing a few hours a week because they have other commitments. Maybe think about how you're going to split the equity between you, and have some of those hard conversations. Is this a passion project for someone, or is this their life's work? Or is this maybe just a fun little side thing that they want to do for 6 months, and then, they're going to go off and, start a different career path or whatever it is. So have those hard conversations, get your team really set, because we do look at the team and try to determine whether teams are, well, I guess that they are ready to go on this journey, and they're not going to fall apart in, 6 to 12 months, but you never know. Things always happen in this space. Very interesting. Then we also look at the market. So where does your product that you're bringing to market, like where does it sit? What is it doing? Which particular area are you trying to disrupt? Is it an underserved space, or is it really busy and you have something very innovative and exciting and a new way of doing things? So, you can really shake up that, busy market. So we want to understand a bit about where you fit in all of that and how well you know that space as well. We also look at technology. So our specialty is deep tech that often has a regulated pathway to market. But that being said, we do have, a broad range. We have unregulated software. We have some drug delivery devices that sort of straddle that biotech, medtech space. So we are able to work with a variety of different teams in healthcare innovation. But the bread and butter and a lot of the pieces, the things we've done for a long time have been sort of deep tech regulated pathways. And then we look also at what's your, where did this idea come from? What is the impact of it? Does it have protectable IP? How strong is the sort of innovation potential behind your technology? We also look at traction, and this is a particularly important one to note for applications, in that traction really matters when you're coming in at this point of the program, because we want to see people who've actually spoken and they've gone out into the ecosystem and spoken with clinicians or had conversations with patients. If you haven't done any of this validation work and you don't necessarily have any kind of data to work off in terms of validating your core assumptions about your solution that you're delivering, then it's useful to lean on maybe some research, academic research that's out there that really validates what you're doing, and to make sure you put that into your application. So we like to see that you've done a little bit of that validation, whether it's through research or with potential users or customers or patients. So just be really wary of that when you are writing your application, because we like to see that you're on the right path and that you have already done some of that work. And then lastly, we also look at impact. So what is the potential for your idea to make an impact on human lives? And that's a really important thing. I should actually mention that we only work with human-based technologies. So we don't do any sort of animal, like veterinary kind of innovation. It's all human health. But essentially, we are looking at for the really exciting technology that is going to impact the way we deliver healthcare. And so whether that's quality of life, well-being, saving lives, helping clinicians have better workflows, we're really looking for impact in this space because we love what we do and we want to see the healthcare ecosystem improve, and the way, we treat healthcare issues change, and all those things. Then lastly, eligibility. So in order to be eligible, essentially you need to be at an early stage. So we like to work with teams who are around sort of a TRL 4, which basically means you're just getting to the prototype stage. Given if you are software, you have a bit of an easier pathway to get your prototype ready. So if you're a software team, you may already have a functional MVP, and that's totally fine. For devices and diagnostic tools, whatever it is, you might be a little bit earlier. So we tend to see a cohort that either has a strong proof of concept, they've done a bit of that validation, and then they are working towards a prototype, or they've just got a functional prototype and they're starting to do a bit more of that broader validation process and really trying to get their commercial strategy lined up. Make those connections into the industry, start to lock in, a strategic partnership that might lead to a pilot study. And so we're really looking for teams that are ready to take that next step and essentially like level up what they're doing and go from very early stage to a fully functioning startup where that is pushing forward. And so in terms of the actual important fine details about eligibility, so we have some requirements for Melbourne, but essentially the Australian-based program is you just need to be able to travel to Melbourne to attend those intensive sprints and also the showcase in person. We do require that teams are incorporated to join the program as well, because we do have agreements that you need to sign as a business and things like that, which I'll talk a bit more about that later. But essentially then for Singapore, you need to be able to travel to Singapore, or if you're an international team, travel to Singapore and attend those intensive sprints in person. And for Singapore-based teams, you need to be registered for less than 10 years, have at least a 30% Singaporean citizen or permanent resident shareholding, and then have an annual turnover less than 100 million or less than 200 workers. So if you're unsure about how you fit in terms of any of those details, just reach out to me and I'm more than happy to have a chat about eligibility. And so basically it's, be able to attend the sprints, be incorporated. If you're in Singapore, note those extra little things. And then essentially, we just want you to be prepared to really dive into this process and be ready to jump on board as a team of founders. And whether or not everyone is full-time or one of you is full-time, we want to see teams that are moving forward and moving quickly. So we want you to be at that stage, ready to start hit the ground running. And I think that's all. The last thing I'll say is we do have a program fee as well. So MedTech Actuator, as Buzz mentioned, is a not-for-profit, but we do take an equity fee for coming into the program, and it's a 5% equity fee that we allocate a standard $1 million valuation at. So that's for all teams who come into the program, and essentially it enables us to celebrate your success and be a part of your journey as you go forward. So we have had almost 80 startups come through the program before, and we have a great portfolio of startups who've, including teams from way back in 2018, like Nutromics, Navi Medical, Moontech, a great startup out of Singapore, that we have used that model with, and now we're still able to, be a part of their journey and really help them. And so essentially, we don't want teams to just disappear after the program. We love working with startups. We love working with startups doing exciting things in healthcare. And so we want to be a part of that journey for the life of your company. And this is the model that enables us to do that and maintain what we do as a sustainable business. So essentially, for teams that are finishing the program, it's not that you disappear or we disappear. We are constantly talking to startups. We talk to Nutromics, I'd say about monthly. We help them with lots of different things. And so we become a soundboard and a shoulder you can lean on in the tough times when you do hit those hurdles and when you need assistance. We're there to back you up. And so we have a strong alumni community as well, which we connect with regularly. We have alumni social events. We are constantly putting alumni in front of investors. So there's a lot of benefits to being a part of the MedTech Actuator community and being an alumni from our programs. So there's a lot of essentially saying that we don't just disappear. So we're open to negotiating that valuation if you do have evidence of an alternative valuation from an external investor. So we're not fixed on that, but you do need to have that evidence, so a valuation on some other legal documentation, and then we're happy to have that conversation. But reach out to me if you have any questions about that. Does anyone have any questions? I feel like I've spoken for a good 30 minutes. And feel free to drop some in the chat, or if you want to book a time and ask them somewhere else, you're more than welcome to just scan the QR code and book a time with me in my Calendly. Otherwise, I'm happy to take questions. I should write a list of FAQs in case people are curious what typical questions are. I'm sure there must be one. So one thing I'll talk about, a lot of people ask, do we have to be incorporated to apply? And do you have to be incorporated to come into the program? So because of that investment opportunity, we do ask teams to sign a safe note to confirm their attendance in the program and that investment opportunity. So essentially, To sign that safe note, you do need to be incorporated as a company. However, the program you don't need to be incorporated to submit an application, and you can just simply like add somewhere in your application, we're in the process of incorporating our business, or just let me know, send me an email. And then basically you have to be incorporated by June 30. And so we can bring you into the program if you are taking your time incorporating, sorting a few things out, whatever it is. We can give you a little bit of an extension and you can join the program on a letter of engagement, I believe it is. So we can work around that. We can be a little bit flexible. However, we do like teams to be incorporated, and I'm hoping we can have all of the kind of documentation and incorporation things sorted before we kick off the program in May. Now, a few questions in the chat. So, can a medical diagnostic company with a TRL3 join the program? Absolutely. It's really about, do you have a strong proof of concept? Have you started any of that prototyping work? So maybe you've done a little bit of bench testing, maybe you've got a good proof of concept behind you. You're welcome to have a conversation with me about whether it's right for you. I'd say yes, if you think, if you've got the kind of time ahead and you're ready to go. So basically the answer is yes, absolutely. I would just make sure it's the right time for your team to join, which if you have that proof of concept and you are ready to really dive into prototyping and you've got a good founding team who has the capability to attend all the programs and make the most of it, then yes, absolutely. It's an amazing time to join. And you can join at a TRL3 too. Michael, how does ownership IP work? Does the patent IP stay with the company? Yes, we really like to see we really like companies to own the IP. Of course, this isn't always the case for everyone. Often you might have research that's coming out of a university space. Maybe you need to license that IP from the university. Every team is different, and it always ends up being a slightly different path for different teams. We love it when the IP is owned by the company, not by a person, as in any investor would. Investors invest in a company and they own shares in a company. So they don't necessarily want to see that IP owned by a person, because at the end of the day, if things go sour, they go south, then they can't walk away with it. But if it's in the company, they can. Buzz, you've turned your camera on. Did you want to add anything to that, or are you just here to chime in on other questions?
No, just here to add to any questions if they need to me. But just on that question, we don't get involved necessarily with any of the IP. We know the IP is really important from an investment perspective. Of course, access and full access to IP is really, really important. Whether that's licensed or whether that's transferred IP. So, yeah, it stays with the company. We don't take any share in any IP.
You might actually be able to answer the next question as well. So maybe I'll hand it over to you to give my voice a break. But can you explain what the $1 million valuation means practically?
Yeah, so it's actually really difficult. And over the years, what we've realized is that $1 million is high for some and low for others. What we've worked out is that most startups at this pre-seeds phase, the chance of success is about 1%. And so to get the investment into that organization, there has to be a risk profile analysis done. And that comes out around $1 million. The only asset that we can really base that on is the team. Because at that moment in time, at a pre-seed stage company, the IP will change, the market will change, the technology will change, the strategy will change, everything will change. Everything that you present to us during this accelerator in 6 months' time will be different. And so the only asset we can put our evaluation on is actually the team. However, if you have raised capital previously, so if you've raised capital through a sophisticated investor, so not mum, dad, grandpa, brother, sister, but a sophisticated investor, an angel, a venture capitalist, a syndicate group, then of course we will honor that valuation. So we're not going to make you do a down round. We will honor any valuations that have been created. If you can justify a higher valuation in some way because you have revenue, or because you have stronger IP, or you're further along the path, you're higher than perhaps TRL5, TRL6, of course, we'll have a conversation with you about that. But generally, 95% of most of the startups come in, their valuations around $1 million. Why? Because if you think about how venture capital and investment works, the average MedTech actuator, the average MedTech portfolio company will exit for around $100 million. And that's probably 1 in 10, 1 in 12 will exit for $100 million. At each round, every investor is in for a 10 times mechanic, which means that your Series A can be no more than $10 to $15 million in terms of valuation, which means your pre-seed has to be around 3 to 4 million. Your seed has to be around 3 to 4 million, which means your pre-seed has to be around $1 million. So if you calculate the expectations from the marketplace, if you put yourself too high, investors won't come in. If you put yourself too low, people think that you're not strong enough. You've really just got to think about your pathway to market, all the elements that come into that pathway, the costs associated as well, how much capital you need to raise, how long it's going to take. And if you think about a pre-seed $1 million, people that are coming in at $1 million, they're going to be waiting 5 to 7 years before they get a return. So that's another big risk that they have to consider. If that's what $1 million, if that $1 million valuation, anything higher, well, then they have to work out whether or not it's worth investing, because actually the risk of the time scale outweighs the risk of the valuation. But it's a decision for you to make. But we tend to stick with $1 million unless there's any exceptional circumstances that we'll have a conversation with about changing.
And just to add to this as well, it can be a bit overwhelming to consider all these things. Taking on equity is really important to think about. And so when you do that first initial application, essentially what we do from that point onwards is, once you've had your interview and we have provided you with an offer, we actually set up onboarding workshops so you can understand better what a safe note actually is and how that will impact your business. And then also how, if you haven't incorporated, should you incorporate and structure your company. So we really try to help you think about what these mechanics are and what signing a safe note at this valuation will do to your company down the line, and what does that mean, so that you feel comfortable coming into the program and you're ready to hit the ground running and you know where you're at. And then essentially throughout the program, we'll constantly look at what is your next step. So this is your valuation at this point in time. What does that mean in 12 months when you're going to raise, or in the next 24 months after that, or in 5 years, as Buzz was saying, when you are looking to exit your business, and what, how it all impacts. So just keep that in mind, that for the first part of the application, you don't need to worry about too much, and you're more than welcome. It's a process and a series of conversations that we'll have. So if it's ever not right for you, then we're very comfortable, having the conversation. You can withdraw your application at any point in time. But I'd recommend, if you are interested, applying for the program, and then once we get into the nitty-gritty, we can walk through it and make sure you understand what's happening behind these mechanisms. Now, Shardine, you asked about, do we need to have a signed founders agreement at the time of application? I would say no, you don't. It's a good document to have, especially somewhere down the line, and it can be something that you work on throughout the program as well, but you don't need to have it at the time of application. A founders agreement is a good document to sort of get your team on the same page and determine, right, how are we going to actually run this business? Are we all, putting in the same amount of hours, or are we doing something different? We will ask you during the application how you are planning to split the equity in your business between your co-founders and anyone else who's involved. So we do want to see that information, which can often be clarified by having a document like a founders agreement in place that is signed. But at the same time, you can just have had the verbal conversations with your team. So that's not a required document. But of course, if you do have it, then it's a great supporting document to provide in that second part where we do the due diligence on your team. And then Michael, you talk, I do mention teams a lot. We love teams at MedTech Actuator, but at the same time, we also understand that solo founders are a thing, and sometimes they're great. I would note with a caveat, teams are also, it's important to have a team around you as a founder to support you. So whether that's actual co-founders or a good group of mentors and advisors, a strong board eventually down the line, to support you as you move forward. So we are open to teams and and solo founders. There's no particular preference, but just know that you're going to need a lot of support. So as a solo founder, coming into a program like this can actually be really beneficial, because you could potentially meet a co-founder, you could meet some great mentors, you can meet people who might come on and be an advisor and end up being your team down the line, whether or not they're actual co-founders though. That's all in the sort of detail, isn't it? So yeah, there's no particular preference, but we love teams because we know that it's a hard journey ahead and you've got that support around you. I think that's all the questions in the chat though. And we are almost at time, 10 minutes to go. Does anyone have any final questions or anything else they want to chat about? I mean, we're an open book. Cool, great. Well, look, please, if you do have anything you want to discuss, if you're unsure about eligibility or whether it's the right program for you or you're at the right point in time to do it, please, you probably will all have my emails, and I'll make sure you all have my Calendly link in the follow-up email from this session. So please book a time to chat with me. All my details are there, and I'm more than happy to talk more information about the program, or whether, learn a bit more about your team and help you decide whether it's a good fit and whether we can actually help you. But essentially, I hope to see your applications. And yeah, really excited for the next cohort. It's going to be great. Well, I'll stop the recording and stop sharing, and then we will wrap this up. Thanks everyone for coming along. Thanks, Buzz.
All right, thanks, Mackenzie. Thanks all. See you soon.
See ya.